Welcome to Modi Briefing. India's moon lander misses wake-up call after successful mission. New York Times. India's first successful space mission to the moon, Chandrayaan-3, could be coming to an end. The mission's lander, Vikram, and rover, Pragyan, have remained silent after mission controllers sent a wake-up message. The spacecraft were designed to operate on solar power, but the extreme cold during the lunar night has likely caused them to fail. Even if they do not revive, the mission has been hailed as a success for the Indian Space Research Organisation, following a previous failed attempt to land on the moon 4 years ago. A passage to military accord with India. The Sydney Morning Herald. Australia and India are strengthening their defence ties in the Indo-Pacific region. The two countries have built partnerships through exercises such as Exercise Malabar, which Australia hosted for the first time in 2023. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, which includes Australia, the United States, Japan, and India, is another important strategic partnership. The Quad aims to maintain a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. India's military power has grown rapidly in the last decade, and it is now the world's fourth-largest military spender. Australia recognizes India as a rising Indo-Pacific great power and an increasingly significant security partner, particularly in the maritime domain. The two countries have a shared vision for the Indo-Pacific region and are committed to contributing to a stable multipolar, regional order based on the rule of law. There is potential for further defense ties between Australia and India, including longer-term reciprocal arrangements for accessing and coordinating capability. Additional defense industrial cooperation, particularly in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, cyber, and space capabilities, is also possible. The two countries could also work together to preserve Antarctica as a region devoted to peace and science, reducing the potential for strategic competition. Overall, the defense relationship between Australia and India has evolved from one of concern and alarm to one of partnership and cooperation. The two countries are now working together to promote regional security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. The West's Modi problem. Financial Times. The escalating diplomatic crisis between India and Canada has raised questions about India's image as a global power and its position as a key democratic ally in the West's efforts to counter China. The conflict began at the G20 summit in September, where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi confronted Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about alleged anti-India activities among Sikh separatists in Canada. Trudeau later announced that Canadian intelligence had credible allegations that Indian agents were involved in the assassination of a Sikh separatist in Vancouver. Both countries have expelled diplomats, and India has stopped providing visas to Canadian citizens. This diplomatic crisis could have broader implications for India's relationships with the US, UK, Australia, and other countries that have invested heavily in India as a democratic ally that opposes China. The US, in particular, has been building a strategic partnership with India to enhance relationships in the Indo-Pacific region. If evidence emerges to support Canada's claims, the US will face a balancing act between its closest neighbor and a rising ally. The UK, which is negotiating a free trade agreement with India, and France, India's second-largest arms supplier, are also in a similar bind. These countries have placed much of their geopolitical wager on India and the leadership of Modi, who has been accused of stoking sectarianism and undermining India's secular values. A wider schism would not only threaten India's move into the US orbit but also hinder efforts to counter China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. Indian public opinion has largely rallied behind Modi in demanding evidence from Canada to support its claims, making the situation even more complex for India's Western partners. While these countries have mostly kept their concerns about India's democratic standards behind closed doors, if Canada's allegations are proven true, they may be forced to reassess their relationships with India. India-Canada row over Sikh killing causes diplomatic shock waves. The Guardian. Canada and India are experiencing a diplomatic row after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused the Indian government of involvement in the assassination of a Sikh separatist leader in Canada. Trudeau's announcement led to the expulsion of a top Indian diplomat from the country. India subsequently expelled a Canadian diplomat, suspended visa applications for Canadians, and accused Canada of harboring terrorists. India has also issued a travel advisory warning its citizens to exercise caution when in Canada. Trudeau has called on India to cooperate with Canadian authorities in their investigation into Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder. Sources in Canada have claimed that Indian officials did not deny their government's involvement when presented with evidence. The allegations have raised issues of foreign killings by the Indian government and may have implications for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It is believed that India has been increasing its actions on foreign soil, with the result that some individuals in Pakistan have been targeted and killed. The Canadian Sikh community, the largest in the world outside India, has been a source of tension between the two countries for many years. India lets out Kashmir separatist leader from house arrest. Deutsche Welle. Mirwais Umar Farooq, a prominent Kashmir separatist, has been released in India after serving a 4-year house arrest term. Farooq was detained by authorities in 2019, a day before Delhi revoked Muslim-majority Kashmir's autonomous status. Farooq called for the freedom of numerous political prisoners at the Jamia Masjid in Srinagar, the summer capital of the Jammu and Kashmir region. Both India and Pakistan control parts of the Himalayan region of Kashmir, with China controlling the remainder. Since 1989, Kashmir has also witnessed a militant insurgency. Rift with Canada puts spotlight on India's security services. Foreign policy. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has accused the Indian government of involvement in the fatal shooting of a Canadian Sikh activist, sparking a diplomatic clash between the two countries. India has rejected the accusations, and in response, Canada expelled a senior Indian diplomat and India threw out the head of intelligence at Canada's embassy in New Delhi. India has also suspended visa services for Canadian citizens until further notice. The tensions between the two countries have been brewing for some time, with India believing that Canada has been sympathetic towards the Sikh separatist movement, while Canada has accused India of interfering in its domestic politics. The accusations made by Trudeau could benefit Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi domestically by feeding into a nationalist narrative that portrays him as a strong leader. However, India's focus on containing the fallout of the accusations distracts from more pressing challenges, such as dealing with China. India's security establishment, led by former intelligence chief Ajit Doval, has concerns about the revival of Sikh separatism. The recent allegations by Trudeau have brought unwanted attention to India's audacious approach towards its adversaries. It remains to be seen how the clash between the two countries will be resolved, but it is clear that the tensions between India and Canada are a result of India's changing direction under Modi and his vision of a Hindu majoritarian state. India set to reserve 1/3 of parliament seats for women. It took 27 years. Washington Post. India has moved a step closer to passing a bill that would reserve 1/3 of seats in the lower house of parliament and in state legislatures for women. The Women's Reservation Bill passed in the lower house on Wednesday and the upper house on Thursday with almost unanimous votes in favor. Approval from half of India's 28 state legislatures is now required for the bill to be passed into law. The bill would amend the constitution to reserve 33% of seats for women in Parliament's lower house and state legislatures, as well as seats reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Muslim MP called terrorist, pimp by BJP member inside India's parliament. Al Jazeera. An MP from India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, has made Islamophobic remarks and used communal slurs against a Muslim MP inside the parliament. During a debate on the success of India's historic moon mission, BJP MP Ramesh Bidhuri called Kunwar Danish Ali of the opposition Bahujan Samaj Party, BSP, a terrorist and a pimp among other offending remarks. Bidhuri also used a slur often used for Muslims in India. The remarks sparked angry reactions from opposition parties and social media users who demanded strict action against Bidhuri. India's parliament passes law that will reserve 1/3 of legislature seats for women from 2029. The Independent. India's parliament has passed a bill reserving 1/3 of seats in the lower house and state legislatures for women. However, the legislation will not be implemented until 2029 and will not apply to next year's national elections. The bill was supported by all opposition parties, who argued that delaying its implementation was an injustice to women. India's once-a-decade census, which was due to be held in 2021, was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Women currently hold just 15.1% of seats in parliament, compared to the international average of 24%. Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder now a balancing act for Trudeau. The Toronto Star. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is struggling to find a balance in his response to the alleged involvement of the Indian government in the murder of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Trudeau is attempting to avoid a repeat of his government's failure to address Chinese interference in Canadian politics, but his vague accusations have created doubt and left Canada in a weak position. The Canadian government needs to provide concrete evidence to support its claims if it wants to hold India accountable and maintain its own credibility. India's vital economic status means Canada will be the loser if crisis escalates. The Globe and Mail. Canada risks losing out in its relationship with India if the current crisis between the two countries escalates, warns former Ambassador Sean Barber. India's economy has grown rapidly in recent years, becoming the world's fifth largest, and is predicted to continue growing faster than any other large economy. India is also attracting foreign investment as Western firms seek to diversify away from China. Barber calls for a high-level dialogue between Canada and India to address shared concerns and reset the relationship. Who should lead the Global South? Foreign policy. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, known as Lula, spoke at the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, in New York, advocating for expanding the UN Security Council and increasing climate finance for developing nations. Lula positioned himself as a representative of the world's developing nations and a leader defending politically liberal values. He met with U.S. President Joe Biden to strengthen workers' rights in Brazil and launched a joint initiative to advance a labor-centered agenda in multilateral forums such as the G20 and UN climate conferences. Brazil also joined a similar initiative launched by the Biden administration that funds technical assistance for global labor organizing. Lula's visit to New York demonstrated that despite lacking the money and firepower of other Global South heavyweights, his defense of liberal values and willingness to engage in dialogue have borne results. Colombian President Gustavo Petro characterized the global migration crisis as driven primarily by climate change and economic inequality and called for addressing these causes. The Colombian government has taken a more laissez-faire approach to northward migration, emphasizing addressing the social causes of migration rather than physical blocking. The Biden administration announced temporary work authorization and protection from deportation for around 500,000 Venezuelans currently in the United States. The Dominican Republic has begun constructing a wall on its border with Haiti and periodically closing the border to crossings. Dominican President Luis Abinader ordered a full closure of the border to air, land, and water traffic, citing a dispute over the Haitian construction of a canal on the border. The closure is expected to cause significant economic disruption between the two countries, as Haiti is the Dominican Republic's third-largest trading partner. Abinader supports Kenya's proposal to lead a multinational police force to intervene in Haiti's crisis, and diplomats are working on drafting a UN Security Council resolution to authorize a Kenyan-led force. Trudeau repeats allegation against India amid row. BBC. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has repeated his claim that there are credible reasons to believe that Indian agents were involved in the murder of a Sikh separatist in Canada. India has strongly rejected the allegations, calling them absurd. The tensions between the two countries have escalated since the accusation was made. Canada has reduced its personnel in India due to threats on social media, and both countries have expelled a diplomat each. The US, UK, and Australia have expressed concern over Canada's allegations. India has stated that it has not received any specific information regarding the claims. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.